All right, today we're diving into something, well, it's pretty mind-bending. It's a concept that could totally flip your understanding of reality on its head. We're talking about chaosmology. So, let's get into it.
So, let me just start by asking you this. We've all been taught that chaos is the enemy, right? It's the thing to avoid, to control, to fight against. But what if that's all wrong? What if chaos isn't the opposite of creation, but actually its very source?
You know, for a long time in Western thought, the universe was seen as a cosmos. The idea was that it's this perfect, orderly, predictable machine, like a beautifully made Swiss watch. In that view, order is the default and chaos is just a bug in the system, an error that needs to be corrected.
Well, chaosmology comes along and just turns that idea completely on its head. It says, nope, you've got it backward. The fundamental reality is chaos, this endless, roiling, creative storm of pure potential. And what we call order, that's just a temporary pattern that forms inside the storm, like a beautiful, fragile whirlpool in a raging river. So the universe isn't a clock. It's more like a storm cloud, constantly changing shape.
So why do we even need this new way of thinking? Well, it's because that old, neat and tidy model of a perfect cosmos, it's starting to show some serious cracks.
Think about the traditional setup. It's almost like a movie plot, right? On one side, you've got Team Cosmos, order, harmony, structure, all the good stuff. And on the other side, you've got Team Chaos, the void, the threat, the abyss. For centuries, the whole game has been about defending the cosmos from chaos.
So where did this radical new idea come from? You might think a physicist, maybe a philosopher, but nope. The first person to really blow this binary apart was actually a literary genius, James Joyce. He invented a word that kicked off a whole new way of seeing things.
Here's the quote from his masterpiece, Finnegan's Wake. It's a wild ride, so listen close. Every person, place, and thing in the Chaosmos of Ali anyway, connected with the gobbly-dumped Turkery, was moving and changing every part of the time. The language is tricky, for sure, but the key idea is right there in the open. In the Chaosmos, everything is always, constantly, in a state of flux.
So what Joyce did here was brilliant. He literally slammed two words together, chaos, the unformed abyss, and cosmos, the ordered world. And the key thing to get is that he isn't saying one beats the other. They're fused together, they're inseparable, two sides of the very same coin.
Okay, so if Joyce was the artist who had this flash of insight, then the French philosopher Gilles Deleuze, he was the engineer who came along and drew up the blueprints. He built an entire philosophical system to explain this new reality.
His name is Gilles Deleuze, and I want to make sure we get this right. It's pronounced Gilles Deleuze. So Deleuze took Joyce's literary idea and turned it into this powerful philosophy. He basically argued that you don't need some divine creator to impose order on chaos. Order just bubbles up from within chaos all by itself. This is where things get really cool, because it requires a whole new kind of logic. You know, classical logic is all about either or. A or B. You're either in this room or you're not. Simple. But chaosmology runs on an and kind of logic. A particle can be a wave and a particle. You can feel happy and sad at the exact same time. Contradictions aren't a problem. They're part of the deal. Deleuze breaks reality down into two parts. First, there's what he calls the virtual. Now, don't think virtual reality like in the movies. Think of it more like a shimmering field of pure potential, a sea where every possibility exists at once. It's totally real, just not solid yet. And then, popping out of that sea, you get the actual. These are the temporary, stable things we can see and touch, the world as we know it.
Now, you can't really talk about Deleuze without talking about his partner in crime, Félix Guattari. If Deleuze gave us the grand theory, Guattari was the guy on the ground, the field agent who turned chaosmology into a practical tool for understanding society, art, and even our own minds. And let's get his name right too. It's Félix Guattari. As a psychoanalyst, Guattari saw chaosmology as much more than just a theory. For him, it was a practical guide, a manual for living and creating in a world that's always trying to make us all the same.
So what was Guattari trying to solve? He looked at the world and saw what he called integrated world capitalism, basically a giant global machine that crushes difference. He called this process homogenesis, making things the same. It flattens the incredible diversity of life into standard units, like money or hours of labor. So what's the antidote? He called it chaosmosis. It's the active, deliberate creation of new differences, of heterogenesis. It's about resisting the pressure to be just like everyone else. To explain this, Guattari created this incredible map of how we become who we are. It has 4 parts. It starts with material fluxes. That's the raw stuff of existence: energy, information, desires. Then come machinic phylums. These are the systems that organize that raw stuff, like genetic codes or languages. Then you have existential territories. That's your you-ness, your sense of home, of belonging. And finally, incorporeal universes. These are the big abstract ideas we live by, like beauty or justice. For Guattari, a truly alive person is someone who's always moving between these 4, always creating something new.
Okay, I know this all sounds super abstract, right? But here's the amazing part. Once you have the idea of the chaosmos in your head, you start seeing it absolutely everywhere, from hard science to ancient wisdom.
Let's start with physics. The Nobel Prize winner Ilya Prigogine showed that when you pump a ton of energy into a system, taking it far from a state of balance, it doesn't just fall apart. The chaos actually organizes itself into something more complex and more ordered. Life itself is the ultimate example of this. So order isn't the enemy of chaos, it's what chaos does. Or look at anthropology. The Bugalot people in the Philippines have this fascinating idea. They don't think you're just born with a soul. They believe that personhood is something you have to actively cut out or create from a background of chaotic spiritual energy. Being a person isn't a given. It's a temporary, hard-won achievement.
This has even seeped into theology. Thinkers like Catherine Keller have gone back to the book of Genesis and pointed out that creation doesn't happen from nothing. It happens within the chaos of the deep, or tehom. This changes everything. It means God isn't a conqueror who defeats chaos, but more like a collaborator, an artist working with a wild, creative material.
And this brings us right to our doorstep, to today. We used to think of our planet's climate as a stable, predictable cosmos. Well, that idea is gone. We are now living in the Anthropocene, a chaotic, unpredictable system where a small push in one area can lead to massive, unexpected changes somewhere else. We have no choice but to learn how to navigate a chaosmos.
And this is the crucial point, so I want to be really clear about it. Chaosmology is not about cheering for disorder and destruction, not at all. It's about recognizing that order isn't the default setting of the universe. It's something that's always local, always temporary, and always has to be actively and creatively built from the inside out.
So, I'll leave you with this to think about. If the universe isn't a finished statue, but an endlessly creative storm, and if order is something we have to build ourselves, not just find, then how does that change the way we live our lives? What do we choose to create?